Hi, this is Royce Eddings, and you are at the Royce in the House YouTube show. And here's my guest, Bruce from the R&B show. And I highly recommend that you go to the R&B show. It's a YouTube channel. They do a fantastic job. The channel's growing. They're very popular, and Bruce is just absolutely excellent. You will love his show, and you will want to subscribe if you go there. Okay, so wait, where did he go? I didn't mean to embarrass you. Okay, you're back. Good. So anyway, again, Royce Eddings, Royce in the House YouTube show. This is our live podcast. We do this every Sunday night. It's a music-based podcast. Tonight, we're going to take a look at the iconic rock stars that were in Laurel Canyon during the 60s and early 70s, and where are they now? But I think we have to digress a little bit and talk a little bit about what was going on in Canyon for people that may not know. And anyway, just I want to welcome everybody that's here. Uh, Thank you all very much for showing up. And anybody that's going to be watching later, all these videos are available all the time. I think I've got 225 videos now. And you go to the YouTube channel, Royce in the House, and there's multiple playlists. You've got this one, the live podcast, where we do interviews of musicians. We did one a week ago. We've got another one coming up this coming Sunday. Bruce, did you ever meet Lou Mars, or did you watch any of the shows when Lou was here? He was a co-host for quite a while.
No, no. I mean, I think I've seen once before when he was on. Hey, Michael.
Okay.
How's it
Hi,
going,
Michael
Bruce?
Nolan. I want to introduce my co-host here, Michael Nolan. Michael Nolan has a fantastic YouTube show, fastest growing show I've ever seen in my life. Michael's doing a great job. He's very popular. Everybody needs to go to Michael's show and subscribe. Everybody. And and Bruce, same with Bruce. We talked about Bruce before you came on. And as you know, we're going to be covering more Laurel Canyon. We did a show on Laurel Canyon 6, 7 months ago. And it's actually my most popular show of my live podcasts. I'm getting several hundred views every month. And it's just about to go through 2,000 right now. Anyway, make a long story short. So what I want to do tonight, though, is where are they now? Where did all these guys go? Where did all these top-ranked musicians that gave us so much wonderful music for so many years? Where are they? What happened to them? And let me just quickly say hi to Angela in the chat. Good to see you, Angela, and thank you very much. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so we're going to get into this and talk about it. And I'm just going to start out by saying, folk musicians, psychedelic rockers, country rockers, they all flocked to Laurel Canyon. And it became just an iconic spot. I mean, people like Joni Mitchell, the Eagles. When I name an individual, I mean the individual. But when I name a band, it could be one or more members of that band. And so when I say, for example, the Eagles, I don't mean that the whole band of the Eagles there. Glenn Frey was there. Glenn Frey, Jackson Browne lived in a basement below Glenn Frey, and they could hear each other what they were doing, and they were working on songs at night. And Glenn Frey actually gave Jackson Browne got stuck on a song, and Glenn Frey gave him the lyrics to finish it, just because he could hear what was going on. It was something like it's a girl, my lord, in a flatbed Ford slowing down to take a look at me. Glenn Frey gave that to Jackson Browne.
Well,
Anyway,
and Glenn Frey also learned how to write a song by listening to Browne
yeah,
hammer away
way
for hours,
hours.
and then he'd say after Jackson would be just repeating a verse, repeating a verse, repeating a verse,
Right.
and then all of a sudden things would go quiet, and he'd think, all right, he's done.
Right.
And then about 5
Right.
minutes later, he'd hear the teapot going off. He was just writing lyrics and having a cup of tea, and then it was back and with the new and improved words. He said he learned more about songwriting living with that guy under those conditions.
Wall. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so hi, Mary Jane. So anyway, I want to mention also, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, before they were the band Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Crosby, Stills, Nash first, but Young later. But all four of them were living in Laurel Canyon, and just about everybody in Laurel Canyon takes credit for creating the band, or influencing them to be a band. Anyway, so they became a great band there. You had the Byrds, the Doors. When I say the Doors, I mean Jim Morrison.
It was Joni Mitchell.
Joni Mitchell.
It wasn't Mama Cass.
Mama Cass claims it. Joni Mitchell claims it. Yeah.
One of them agree with that. The other two did not agree with that. And there's a documentary on Laurel Canyon. That's out. It's a two-parter, right?
Yeah.
And they talked very specifically about how Crosby, Stills, and Nash met. First of all, it was Crosby and Nash who met at Joni Mitchell's house. And of course, Crosby had the biggest doobie on the planet, and they shared a joint and they got to know each other. It was on a second visit there that Stephen Stills was there. And they sang one of Stephen Stills. Well, he was singing one of his songs that he had just written. And Nash said, play that again. And then he'd do it again. He goes, no, play it again. And he played it like 3 or 4 times, Royce, before Nash had it in his head, suggesting some middle harmonies for Crosby.
Okay.
And they couldn't believe their ears at Joni Mitchell's house in her kitchen.
Well,
around the kitchen table.
Those guys harmonized as great as anybody harmonized.
Oh yeah.
I used to have a friend that anytime he got in the car, all he would put in was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And when they started harmonizing, he would go, angels singing, angels singing.
Yes. And there's that old adage that the Beach Boys, brothers sound good. The Everly Brothers, the Andrews sisters. There's something about the DNA, the vocal cords blending and everything. But then you had the rare artists like the Beatles and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. No relationship. Some of them coming from different cultures, right? And somehow they sound like they were born in the same damn house, man. It's awesome.
The other thing that must have been strong too was the weed, because everyone seems to remember this story differently. I was just listening to Rick Rubin's podcast this week, and it was a 2-parter with Graham Nash, and he always credits Mama Cass with, unifying them. So, and everyone always kind of remembers how they met differently and where it was, and how they kind of structured things. So it's it speaks to the times, I guess.
Well, what's also funny is most of them lived within walking distance to one another, and they would just hang out and they play music till the wee hours of the morning. Mama Cass always had food at her house. I understand she never cleaned her house, but she always had food there, and she always got everybody to come up and hang out at her house. And Linda Ronstadt did that kind of stuff too.
Well, they all agreed that Mama Cass was the queen of the high.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All of them.
So we had members of the Eagles, members of the Monkees, 2 of them anyway. Peter Tork and Mickey.
Who couldn't keep his clothes on.
Yeah. No. Peter Tork threw a lot of parties, and the one requirement was you took your clothes off before you crossed into the house. Everybody.
He was a nudist.
Peter Tork's house naked.
Right.
Which is really ironic because of everyone in that scene, considering he had like probably the most squeaky clean image because of the show.
Right.
But he was the one who threw the wildest parties. By all accounts, his parties in Laurel Canyon are the stuff of legend.
Right. One of the most famous, I forget her name, female photographer of the time. I mean, she was breaking new rules because it was a man ruled. Her and Linda Eastman, people like that women like that were starting to make headway. She said that she filmed everybody, just like Linda Eastman would.
Yeah.
But she said for whatever reason, she filmed Peter Tork more than any other human being alive. She was just enamored with him.
Wow. That's
yeah.
So, I mean, we had the Byrds, the Doors, meaning Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison lived in a little kind of almost like a shack behind the store, which eventually burned down. Fortunately, he wasn't in it when it burned down. But I thought that was kind of a funny story. He lived there with his girlfriend of many years. Okay. So we had, Byrds, Doors, Love, Buffalo Springfield members. Frank Zappa. Zappa lived there. Uh,
Zappa was one of the very earliest rockers to live in Laurel
yeah,
Canyon,
Alice Cooper, or shall we say Vincent Furnier,
right?
who had the Alice Cooper band.
Hmm.
It was that band. Yeah, he wasn't branded himself Alice Cooper yet. We
Well,
had
it was Zappa that got Alice Cooper their first record thing going. He said, "Show up at 7." So they showed up at 7, and he comes out going, "What the hell are you doing?" And they said, "You said show up at 7."
right,
He said,
right,
"Yeah,
right,
7 p.m., doofus."
right.
You know.
Yeah,
But
that
he
caused a
said,
big
"I
problem.
don't get your music. That's why I'm going to sign you." Isn't that cool?
Yeah, no, that's
Oh,
totally cool. I read that story too. Yeah, that's great.
yeah,
Okay, so we had Janis Joplin, of course. I mentioned Jim Morrison, Jackson Browne, of course, Carole King, Canned Heat, buddy, Canned Heat. Did
yep,
you see that album I showed last night of Canned
yeah,
Heat? Oh my God, I love that album.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
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 yeah. I
there's some
saw
great
that
stuff.
video.
Yeah, thank you. Canned Heat, John Mayall. I saw your video too. Uh, uh, well, you recently did one with Jethro Tull, and I've got four Jethro Tull albums. Like
Boy, you know
once
what?
I
I'm
saw
going to
your video,
finish that video up because I promised, because I only covered the 3 pre-releases.
yeah,
And as I was editing, the album came out. That's why you see a little flag come, like you see down
okay,
here,
right,
coming across saying it's actually been released as I'm editing this video now, guys.
oh,
But you know what? I've been listening to that album. It's great. This is
I've been listening.
Jethro Tull.
I've been listening to. I saw him in concert in Las Vegas when I was a teenager, an older
Oh,
teenager.
but this is so fresh sounding,
Oh,
Royce.
I know.
This,
Yeah, that's what you
oh,
were saying. Yeah, I can't wait to hear.
yeah,
I'm going to buy that as soon as I
yeah.
can. Okay, so we had Bonnie Raitt, Linda Ronstadt, Harry Nilsson. And incidentally, we're going to talk about where they are now, so I'll save that. There were some significant deaths at the flat in London owned by Harry Nilsson. I visited that flat on my tour, rock and roll tour of London, where I was trying to hit all the famous rock sites and stuff where the rockers hung out, studios that they played in. And me and Jordan the Lion wound up at Harry Nilsson's flat talking about who died in his flat. And I'll throw it out right now. Janis Joplin, what am I saying? Mama Cass Elliot died at the flat in London owned by Harry Nilsson, as did the Who's famous drummer. They both died in
Oh,
the same flat at different times. And
wow.
the story was always that Cass Elliot choked on a ham sandwich, choked to death. Everybody liked to tease her about her weight, but the truth was that absolutely there was a ham sandwich laying on a plate that had not been bitten into. She did not choke to death on a ham sandwich. So
All right.
anyway, thought I'd get that out of the way. Okay, then we had Mickey Dolenz and Peter Tork of the Monkees, John Phillips of the Mamas and Papas, as well as Michelle and Mama Cass, as we've already discussed. Glenn Fry, we've already discussed how he lived next to Jackson Browne. So all of these people, I mean, Our House was written by Graham Nash while he was, Joni Mitchell. Well, him and Joni Mitchell were a thing, and he wrote that song about the house they were living in, Our House.
Actually, it was based on a walk they just had, and she had bought a vase with some
Okay.
painted flowers on it, and she just
Okay.
was enamored with it.
I
And
just remembered. Okay.
he said they were in love. This is like two young true lovebirds, great love story, right? So they get back home, and he says, "Why don't you go out and get some flowers for the vase, and I'll build a fire."
Okay.
And
That's
she
cool.
went out to get the flowers. By the time she got back,
Yeah.
those were the lyrics.
Those were the
True.
lyrics.
That's a true story. See,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why I
Yeah.
love classic rock, Royce.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
that's art. That's
Yeah.
living art. That's allowing your life to become art. Oh,
Right.
and I'm such a fan of that.
Right. Right.
Yes, Bruce. Yes.
Yeah. No, I love it too, and it's funny because who knew that I'd still be enjoying the bands I was listening to as a late teenager into my early 20s. I mean, that has not diminished. I mean, I've added, just like we all have, whether it's the Police or whoever, they came along a little bit later, not too much later, earlier 70s, but we've all added to it, but we have not forsaken our roots,
Right.
At this
And
point,
younger people, Royce, it doesn't happen like at 15 to 30 like it used to.
yeah,
But the younger folks who are listening to whatever hip hop, rap, or bullshit that's out there now, finally get, they become a little bit seeded, but they're still real young, right around 30, right? Those people start turning to classic rock. Those people who make the most money on the planet. All right. So that's why you see me get all hot and freaking bothered on my channel when people in my latest video I cover who's ahead in the tally on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah, I watched that. Yeah,
right.
Did you see my comment on that?
Yes, I did, Royce, and that's why I showed up here. I've been sleeping all day because putting out these videos lately to keep up has really been tough. But here's the thing. This is why I get so damn defensive about this. I say it all the time on my channel. We were so blessed to live. You and I are 1 year apart, brother. You and I, we are brothers from a different mother. All right. And I'm going to tell you something, man. I know for a fact, if I had met you back then, you'd be my kind of guy. I'd be hanging with you, because we in our generation, we saw the birth of art in rock and roll. Rock and roll started just before you and I were probably really actively listening to it. I mean, it goes back to early Son Elvis recordings, the Bill Haley in the comments and all of that, and I have a memory that goes way back, and I was into like the Everly Brothers and Johnny Cash, but because my parents were country and Western musician singers, right? So that's about as bold as I got. But by the time the 60s, the Beatles arrived, and they dared everybody to become better. They were the spark, they were the fire. But we saw the birth of a true art form. I say it all the time, and I sometimes feel like I don't get that across. This is an art form. I will compare the greatest recordings of rock and roll to anything hanging in the Louvre. I've said that before. I will compare those recordings to the statue of David. All right. The Last Supper. Okay. It is that fine of an art. And if we're not careful, we're going to see the death of that art. It doesn't always have to be on top, but it should always be healthy. If it goes the way of jazz, jazz was the hottest thing in the 40s, man. And then it just became like a subgenre that aficionados like. If that's the wave of the future for rock and roll, more power to it. I dig that. But it's always got, jazz moves forward sonically for the most part. There's exceptions to that rule. But breaking the rules in some sort of fashion that somehow makes sense to us. All right. I'm not a great jazz aficionado, but I took some courses in art appreciation and all music appreciation and all of that. I know what to listen for. Right. And at least jazz is healthy. Jazz. I worry that rock is going to go by way of the Archies, man, if we're not careful here.
Well, you're right. I like jazz, but for some reason I rarely buy jazz. I mean, I have Miles Davis, Some Kind of Blue, Now, when I was a teenager,
that's more than I've got.
All my friends were starting to get into a little bit of jazz with everything else, not a lot, but we all liked Ramsey Lewis, who played piano. Mm-hmm. So at UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Ramsey Lewis was going to give a concert. So we all went. Nice little indoor small venue. And I'll never forget, I was heading for an exit behind the stage. The door had swung open when it was over with. And Ramsey Lewis and I just slammed into each other. He was coming this way. I was being blinded by the light of that open door from that dark room. And so we were kind of, experimenting with a little jazz back then, and a few other artists as well. But it never got, there's a lot of YouTube shows that are exclusively jazz bums and jazz this and jazz that. And they get together and have these big long talks about jazz and show their records.
Oh, I watch those shows, by the way, all the time. And I'm not even strictly in the vinyl community, Royce. Right now, we talked about that. Through happenstance, I'm digital right now, and that's a long story. But I love the vinyl community because of what they know. And I used to be part of that vinyl community. When I lost my first collection of records, they were right around 1,200. I replaced them with CDs, and that was around 1,200. And I both times had to get rid of my collections due to hardships in life, right? But I love the vinyl community, especially. And I'm not talking about the channels that go, well, does this have this etching in it and stuff, which I'm fine with, right? But if they do have that, was that manufactured in the east part of the plant, or was that on the second floor?
Right.
And I'm even kind of a geek about that. I love listening. But if it's all that, then I start losing my mind a little bit. That's why I love Rachel's Ghost. Okay, I watch that whenever I possibly can, and the reason is she's kind of like me. She's about a 3 or 4 trick pony herself, right? My biggest jazz excursion was Mahavishnu and Steely Dan, 2 of my favorite bands, right? But other than that, I love great country. I love great blues. I love great rock.
Yeah,
I love some of the classics. I'm getting better at that, but I love some of the great composers. I love classical music, but that's it for me.
We went through a country phase years ago, like I don't know, late 80s or something like that. I had a couple of young guys working for me that were real cowboyish, and this is a ranch type area. Even where I live on a couple of acres, it used to be the 3F Meadows Cattle Ranch. They cut it up and sold it to people to build their custom homes on. And we have that all over town, all over the county, actually. And there's still cattle. There's a big herd of bighorn, longhorn cows, with they can get like 9 feet across. I actually did a video on them. It's on my YouTube channel. I was so impressed with it. I just love those longhorn steers. But anyway, so it's that kind of an area.
I really love your travel video. Travel videos, by the way, Royce.
Mid-State Fair that comes every year. It's on for like 14 nights and always has a grandstand headliner. I've seen Eddie Van Halen. I've seen Tom Petty. I've seen just act after act. I even saw Slash there as Velvet Revolver. But we've seen a lot of good rock. But it was always a little more heavier on the country because of the area we live in. And it is a country fair. The kids raise their farm animals and take them there for showing and things like that. There's a huge carnival. There's all kinds of free shows. They're free to the people who want to watch them, but they're sponsored, and the bands are getting paid money. And I've seen some great acts there, And, so anyway,
Royce, I just wanted to quickly also, I wanted to speak to something that you mentioned earlier too, about like how you never could have predicted, like growing up, how this music has stayed with you. And I'm often struck by the same feeling. Like everything that I loved then, I love now. And I feel like all this music keeps getting validated in some ways. And I take particular heart in like the YouTube reaction community, because again, it's a younger generation. They oftentimes, again, they don't know the history. They don't know the critical standing of this music. Oftentimes they don't even know who the band members are. They're just listening to the music, and they're still like, some of those popular ones are continue to be Pink Floyd, Beatles, Led Zeppelin. And the music still, as they're discovering it, is getting favorable reactions each and every time. That speaks to me more than anything about the longevity of how successive generations keep discovering it. That speaks more than anything else to me.
Right. I
I
agree.
so agree with you, Bruce. I so agree with that.
And rock is my music and all the subgenres of it, whether they're metal or whatever. But
Right.
I'll tell you what, you take a song like Alison Krauss and Brad Paisley's Whiskey Lullaby, that stands up well to almost any rock song as far as I'm concerned. Are you guys familiar with that song? Oh,
no,
man.
I'm not.
Oh man, go on YouTube.
I'll check it out.
Whiskey
I'll check
Lullaby.
it out, Royce.
Whiskey Lullaby. I mean, it's a real tearjerker. You get the video with the song. It's
See, I'm only familiar with her because, of course, right. That's how I even know she's alive. But and I've listened to their 2 albums, and I love her. Matter of fact, I'll tell you what to listen to. I'm not going to think of the title, but it's on their new album, the one they're going to tour this year. They're not coming out to California. No. Robert, what's wrong with you? But
what's the deal?
But it's the song that was written by the Everly Brothers. Royce, listen to, first of all, find out what that song title is. It's just escaping me. Listen to the Everly Brothers cut first. Okay. Then go to the Alison Krauss and prepare to be amazed. Prepare. Okay. This is a perfect example of how certain people can cover a song and then own it, right? It's like, to me, Eric Burdon and the Animals own House of the Rising Sun.
Oh, no.
All right? Now, the Frigid Pink did a okay version, but it's Eric Burdon and the Animals. That's the one with guts. That's the one with balls, right?
Oh, that's a badass song.
This particular Everly Brothers cut, the difference, the way, and the Everly Brothers cut is brilliant. They're the Everly Brothers, right? To me, the Everly Brothers are pre-Beatles. All right,
the harmonies.
Them and Buddy Holly. Yeah. Those 2 acts those 2 acts pointed to the future. They didn't even know it, but they did. They bridged early rock and roll to what would happen in the 60s. And they did it brilliantly, either through strong song structure. Both of them are good at that, but particularly Buddy Holly, or harmony approach.
I think the Beatles were heavily influenced by them. I think I've even read that
they were.
Yeah.
Yes, they were.
Paul harmonies were straight from that.
Yeah, Paul owns all of Buddy Holly's catalog. All right. He's written songs for the Everly Brothers. Right. He loves them, and that's both him and John said they got their whole harmonic approach to listening to the Everly Brothers and their whole idea on how to write a song from Buddy Holly.
Awesome.
They just wish that they could have looked like Elvis Presley. That's what John would say, because John said, when I first saw, Elvis, he says, he's such and he didn't mean this in any gay way or anything. He just said, he's such a beautiful man,
No, I understand. Yeah.
I always said Elvis would have, if they had the technology, he could have played Superman, right? Superman.
Oh yeah.
He had it.
He could have played anything he wanted,
Yeah, no, but he looked more like Superman than Christopher Reeves, I mean, he looked like freaking Superman.
Right.
Huh.
Yeah, no, he was a fortunate man for sure. Oh my God. The Beach Boys weren't there, but Brian Wilson, songwriter and producer, was in Laurel Canyon. You guys knew that, I guess.
Complete with sandbox.
Yeah.
And a piano next to it.
I want a sandbox in my living room.
Me too. That just sounds so rock and roll,
The beach all year round.
Mama Cass routinely held picnics, and she always had deli food because she knew David Crosby would come over looking for deli food, so she always had it.
And you know what? At one of her barbecues, she invited Eric Clapton, who she had met in England. And exactly Eric, I've got photos of Eric Clapton just sitting like this, looking at Joni Mitchell, because she was using alternative tunings on her guitar. Oh, all right. Man. Because, she was into alternative tunings way before almost anybody in rock and roll. And he's just engrossed. He had never, ever, ever heard of anybody tuning it to another chord and then using different finger patterns. And it just shows him looking at her like
blown away, huh?
He almost looked like those photos with George Harrison just looking at Ravi, you know? I mean, I swear to God, I was impressed with that.
And you can see in those photos, that photo session, you can also see Mickey Dolenz is on Super 8 or something.
Yes.
He has phone footage filming that. So somewhere in his archives, he has footage of that.
Right.
I wound up adding Jimi Hendrix to the mix here, not because I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. That wasn't the idea, but I was reading that in like '67, Jimi Hendrix was opening for the Monkees.
Oh yeah.
And so he came to Laurel Canyon often. In fact, the last show I did about Laurel Canyon, Jimi Hendrix is leaning over Michelle Phillips and Mama Cass is on the other end of the couch. And he spent a lot of time there. Whenever he was in LA, there was a room at a cabin that they just gifted it to him. You know, somebody did.
Mm-hmm.
He could just stay there for free. And so he was up there quite a bit. And so I just thought I'd throw that in. There's also an interesting story about, I like the one you brought up. And I had actually notes on that one too, where Eric Clapton was there at that one picnic or barbecue, whatever it was.
Right.
And I think there was somebody else that wasn't typically up there. And it's hard to remember all of this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Especially when I spent most of the day weed eating out in my farm.
Right. Well, you know, even at first, Nash was just a visitor. He actually went back to England for a while just felt that the power draw him back. You know, that and Joni Mitchell, of course. But, you know, talk about Joni Mitchell here. Out of all of the female, you know, they always try to say that she comes from folk rock. And she says, I'm not. I'm a classical musician. I'm a classical songwriter. Okay. And I agree with her. And, you know, the fact that listen to the lyrics to Woodstock. Now, she didn't go to Woodstock, but she was very good friends and heard everything the very next day from the people that were there. And she embodied it. She brought it in. Here's part of what Laurel Canyon. Here's the magic, right? She drew it in. This magic power that happens. They're like, what do they call that? Everybody has ley lines and there are zones where there are powers to the earth and all of that. I don't believe in that.
You're starting to sound like my daughter now.
Yeah, but I don't believe
they call it. They call it different dimensions or something. I can't remember.
Well, I will say it became a vortex for several reasons, not for anything mystical, but where the United States was and its politics at the time, the freedom of the West Coast and the excessive freedom of the lower West Coast, the culmination and the accidental good rent prices that cost them nothing, that allowed them 10 minutes at max to be anywhere in LA they wanted to be.
Oh, yeah.
And it just so happened this group of people who moved in at that time were all burgeoning musicians who had some success, but not a lot of it. And we saw it explode. Vortexes happen, brother. There's magic to rock and roll. I'm telling you. I feel it every time I listen to a great classic cut, man.
Yeah. Well, you know, what's interesting, too, is like, you know, Laurel Canyon is a windy road. There's big groves of eucalyptus trees. You feel like you're way the hell up in the mountains somewhere. But the reality is you're 5 to 6 minutes from Sunset Boulevard.
That's right.
You know, and the store at the bottom of the hill was kind of the hangout. If you weren't partying at Mama Cass's or somebody else's house, you could go out of the store and usually find some of your neighbors down there just hanging out.
Right.
But, and if they weren't there, you went to the Whiskey A Go-Go and everybody would be there. You know, it's like one or the other. One of the houses, the store, or the Whiskey A Go-Go. People hung out. But anyway, what a magical place in time, Laurel Canyon.
Oh, yeah.
It's just unbelievable, you know. And of course,
and the freedom to write lyrically whatever you wanted. You know, Stephen Stills with Buffalo Springfield, writing about how the old guard were trying to enforce curfews to kids who were 15 to 20 years old, and how this was, you know, the old way. I'm not even sure that song is a very responsible song looking back, but you've got to understand that was, you know, Buffalo Springfield with that one top 10 hit started a movement, and it did. What's the name of the song? The name of the song's never in the lyrics.
No, it's not in the lyrics, but it's like a huge hit. It made every one of it.
For what it's worth, right? And you know, that, I think that was a sounding board, and of course, Stephen Stills, I think that was the song that set that mother free as a writer.
Yeah,
you know, because he wasn't playing. You know, he was doing his best not to play second banana to Neil Young.
Well, you know, he went from Buffalo Springfield to play on that Super Sessions album.
Right.
You know, and then from there,
one of the best classic rock records ever. I love that.
I know, I do too.
Season of the Witch, man. I just love that cut.
I was so glad to find a clean copy of that a couple of weeks ago.
I saw your video on that. Yeah,
you know, I've been looking for that for so long, and all of a sudden I walked in. It's just like the other day. Okay, I've been wanting a copy of Yellow Brick Road, Elton John's double album set. It's kind of a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece. But anyway, and I've looked, and every time I found it, I found a thrashed cover, some scratches on the vinyl, and I always passed. So I was at a record store about maybe no more than 3 weeks ago, right? And I bought a brand new one. I bought a brand new Yellow Brick Road. Okay. The very next day, I walk into one of the used vinyl stores at a antique store that I go to that has a big stock, and found a perfect original pressing of Yellow Brick Road, and I bought it.
Of course, you had to, huh?
Yeah, you had to do it.
It was an OG, an original pressing. You know.
Oh my God, what a find!
I lost my mind when I saw that, like the very next day.
What did it go for, brother? If you don't mind me asking.
No, I don't mind you asking at all. You know, I might have to pull it out because I think the sticker's still on it. But it was cheaper than the new one, and it's the original pressing. But you know what?
Wow.
Let me just grab it.
Yeah. An original pressing of Yellow Brick Road. Yeah, that's a nice find.
Awesome.
And it's in great condition, you say?
It's in perfect condition.
And man.
Because I'm going to do a show on some recent vinyl purchases, and this is it. This is
wow, look at that.
Yellow Brick Road. I mean, even the cover is not scratched up. First pressing, $24, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah, $24. And I'm telling you, the vinyl looks like it's never been played, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
nice.
I mean, you know, and I just love, you know, Elton John, almost all of his albums.
Oh, man, what a find. That's nice.
All of them are like gatefolds. Oh, I know. I'm so stoked about this.
And
so now I've got the other one. Now, what I want to do is I want to start soon. I've been really busy the last few days, but I want to start A and B in the two.
Yeah.
You know, and
that might even make a great video for you.
Exactly.
4 sides here, but maybe listen to as much as a whole side at once, and then maybe isolate individual songs. And just
but do a video on it, Royce.
Yeah, because you have the story.
Yeah.
So you have the backstory for finding it, and you can do the A/B comparison. That's a great video there. Yeah.
You know, I found this album twice at that same place, thrashed. You know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like I said, there is not a mar on this vinyl of any kind.
Sometimes you just luck out, you know.
I couldn't believe it. I wish I'd have lucked out maybe a day sooner.
I know.
Wow. You know, I was always so particular about keeping even my covers perfect condition and everything. You know, even way back in the day, you know, protective sleeves and everything. And 99% of my friends, and some of them collected a lot of records. They, you know, not as many as I did, but a whole lot. Their records would look like crap in 6 months, you know.
Yeah, the first thing
it used to drive me up the wall, you know.
All of mine is put them in one of these.
Look at that.
Free protective covers, you know. And like I said, I wasn't going to pull this out, but I mean, there is not the slightest. I mean, this looks like brand new, like it's never been played. It looks so good.
You know, I'm such a fan of Elton from the Elton John album with Your Love, all the way up to Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah.
That slew of albums, he everything he does is perfect. He is as solid as the Beatles were at their finest slew of the same amount of albums. He's that good. Yeah. He's that slick, man.
Great. I feel great to see him twice in concert.
Yeah, and he put out some great stuff after, but not at that level. Not at that level. Him and Toppin had that magic touch. Tumbleweed Connection's probably my favorite.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah,
you know, because of it, it's a rustic approach. I thought that was kind of a bold. That was even before. See, my favorite Eagles album is the Desperado album. So you can't beat the country out of me, you know. Yeah. But I love both of those albums for the same. Let's get back to the let's take on an almost we're in the old West rock and roll. Rock guitarists are the new gunslingers in town kind of approach. Yeah, right. I bought into that whole fantasy, you know. Absolutely. And any album that had that approach or anything, it was like, yeah, I'm right there, man.
You know, that's exactly right. You know, Angela's got some great comments as usual.
Oh, yeah.
Laurel Canyon, similar to Haight-Ashbury. That's exactly right. Just the timing and the right musicians being there. Cheap rent had a lot to do with both locations. That's absolutely right, Angela.
Yeah, Angela, that's a great point.
I loved her earlier statement. We were busy talking and stuff, but she said something to the effect of Jimi Hendrix opening for the Monkees. I mean, just try to wrap your head around that. You know? Especially when you watch the Monkees show every week, like I did as a kid, you know. And they're always clowning and stuff like that. Here Hendrix comes out and plays, this godly guitar music, and the Monkees come out after that. But I love them.
And the whole audience is crying for like Davy Jones the whole time. Poor Jimmy.
But the Monkees, to me, they are rock's anomaly. To me, I see them as a rock band. I do, ultimately, but they didn't start off that way. They were a TV show about a fictional band who just so happened to use their real names. So right there, just the fact that they used their real names, and yet they were a fictional band, and right as the Beatles were taking a left turn, these guys drove right down Broad Street where the Beatles had been leading, right? And so there was a thirst for that, especially amongst 12-year-old girls.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, when the Monkees came out, what year did they come out? I can tell you how old I was. 66, I was 11. I was perfect for it. I loved it.
Yeah.
And to me, the Monkees, obviously so much has been said, but looking back historically, I think that they were, for what they did, which was this hybrid of the television and music, they were actually the very best at what they did, which was that mix of, the
Monkees were super popular in Laurel Canyon. They were one of the favorites of everybody. Everybody.
Oh, and that, and going off with what Bruce is saying here, Royce, is all of these rock stars, they loved the Monkees. The Beatles.
They loved the Monkees. Yeah.
They loved them. They were going,
what they were going for. It was all the critics who didn't understand.
When Frank Zappa loves them, come on. I mean, if he loves them, I mean, he's got to be like the coolest cat in town there. He was like the tribal chieftain, if you ask me.
And Michael
he really was.
Is still one of the most underrated songwriters of that period.
Yes, he is.
Dolan's one of the most underrated pop singers of that period too.
No, they were actually good. Well, there was other kind of fun movies on too. Remember Hullabaloo and Paul Revere and the Raiders?
Right. Yeah.
And they were
where the action is my because I had Paul Revere and the Raiders, and it was the West Coast version of the Dick Clark East Coast. Okay. Remember? And it was called Where the Action Is. The song was was Paul Revere and a Raiders song going down where the action is. Right. It was a great, and I was probably 9 years old when that came out. And that's why I almost consider from 9 years old till I was about 15 as my preteen years,
Okay. And you know what? I mean, Michael, you know this because it goes back maybe about over a year. You know, I actually made a video on the Monkees in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right.
But one of the points I made is that the Monkees did something that I think no other bands would have done when faced with the actual amount of money that they were generating. They actually had the guts to rebel against the system, which would have cost them all that income, but to do it so that they could have the artistic freedom. And, you know, people, as much as they talk about punk and like the revolution of that and the rebellion, no punk band, when placed in that position of making that kind of money, I think would have done the same thing. So I always give them credit for fighting the system to be able to have more control over the music, which was what Mike certainly wanted from the get-go, and Peter.
And Peter too.
Actors were a little more
that's
flexible.
really interesting, Bruce.
Right. And you know what? Mickey Dolenz learning the drums so that he could even mime them for the shots and becoming a drummer, stepping up. And by the way, when they came out, I had already been a fan. I had two favorite shows from the 50s that not Lucy or anything like that. I loved Robin Hood from England. And that guy sung by Dick James, who was the head of the Beatles music publishing. Robin Hood, riding through the glen. That's Dick James, right? And then I also loved, what was the other one that was, Circus Boy.
Yeah.
Starring Mickey Dolenz.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, he played a little orphan circus boy who had that in Doctari. I remember later on, Doctari had that same Flipper, all those kind of half-hour action shows, you know. And so I was aware of him even when the Monkees came out. I go, oh, it's Circus Boy. I didn't know his name or anything,
I
you
just
know.
came across that the other day.
Yeah.
Online,
yeah.
Circus Boy. I wasn't even aware of that.
But think about it. The Monkees look, the whole visual look of the show.
Oh, yeah.
Compare that with Gilligan's Island season 2 and 3, once they went color, and the Batman show. This bloom of color, this bloom, like that peacock, you know, that we all of a sudden saw for the first time in color. That helped give them a lot of popularity with kids who were just coming into color, you know. And I'll compare Nesmith's Joanne to any Monkee song, and I love the Monkee songs, you know. So I love Last Train to Clarksville. I got to tell you,
great.
Yeah,
I've got an old friend. He was actually a friend of my older brother, who was 9 years older than me. This guy's 9 years older than me too. But he used to come over to my house to visit my older brother. And I would play on my little acoustic guitar, The Last Train to Clarksville, the intro. And to this day, the first thing he'll say when he sees me is, "You still playing Last Train to Clarksville?"
and you know, ultimately, these guys do belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't care what anyone says, because if you actually look at how many people they actually influenced to form bands because of the power of the television show, they had more of an influence on musicians than a lot of people who are in the hall. So it's bullshit that they're not in.
Perfectly said, Bruce. You're absolutely right. And they not only represented themselves that way, but they grew into a band. They willed themselves into a band. Now, how good of a band were they once they got there? I don't give a flying fig. I'm telling you, that's what a garage band is. Only their garage was a TV studio.
Yeah, and
they are a fucking garage band. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, and the thing with these guys too is that they didn't have sort of the luxury that the Beatles had to make all their mistakes in private, you know, because this was a band that was put together for television. So they were under the spotlight the whole time. So for that very compressed period of time that they had to get that act together, they did a phenomenal job. You know, I mean, they don't really get quite the credit they did for pulling it off. And the credit, what the testimony to that is the fact that people to this day are confused about whether they were a real band or not. That's how good they pulled off the whole, I guess, mirage or the illusion of this project, you know?
Right.
And guess what? When they did play live, they didn't have any freaking backing tracks.
Exactly.
So take that, 2023.
Well, you know? Michael Nesmith made a very interesting comment. He said after after the Altamont concert killing, where the Hells Angels were security for the Rolling Stones, which turned out to be a great idea, and the Manson murders, things started to change a little bit up there in Laurel Canyon. People started locking their doors. Before that, the doors were left wide open. They started buying guns, and they kind of started graduating from pot to cocaine. And it was sometime later, but the end of the era, there in Laurel Canyon. I mean, with a real ending. I mean, money changes everything. People were becoming wealthy because they were becoming big stars, and so people were moving out and going to more expensive.
Starting with John and his wife from the Mamas and Papas, they moved to Bel Air. Moved to Bel Air and bought about 5 Cadillacs, right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. So things were changing, but then we had these murders there. The Wonderland murders, and it was gang.
Oh yeah,
5 people were killed, and it was kind of a drug thing, Right. And that kind of ended the whole thing up there completely. What was left of it, and there wasn't that much left of it by then, but that was the death knell in the whole thing. And,
and you know what? By then, the drug was, what was it? Mainly cocaine by that point.
Yeah, that's right.
And when that vortex happened, just a few years prior to it just blowing up, the drug of choice, taken very sparingly by most of these artists, was LSD. Joni Mitchell said that she saw subatomic, the new principles of subatomic, what is it? The subatomic realm, it's a study of science where everything runs below even atoms. There's almost a stream. Quantum physics. Thank you, Bruce. I was having a brain fart. But in quantum physics, it talks about everything. The disappearing quarks that happen on one side of the universe, and then they're here and all of that. She said that on one of her acid trips, she saw that. She said, first I saw electricity everywhere. And then I saw it bleeding into everything and how we're all connected. All right. Now, I do believe in some of that. I think there is some truth into what she's saying. But let's say you don't. Let's say that's nothing more than a new mindset brought on by LSD. Now, I've taken LSD. All right. And I can tell you what I saw was very enlightening. I saw the world differently. I am not a proponent of taking LSD, by the way, folks. Some guy, I was 17, came in the bathroom at school and said, "Hey, want to drop some acid, man?" And I didn't know that was LSD. I had heard horrible things about LSD. So not wanting to not appear dumb or uncool, I went, sure, man. Sure. Right? Like an idiot. Cool. And so I was on LSD, thinking I don't know what I was taking, that was part of the danger of that culture. But here's the deal. Once I did it, we were in a basketball court. You see the cement. Then you see on another dimension, the paint around the key paint, the painting on the court to show you where, all right. And then on top of that, the leaves in North Carolina in the fall, with the trillion color leaves, you'd see wisps of wind. You could almost see the wind, right? And that does something. All right, now you're a songwriter, or you're a sculptor, or you're a painter. That's where there might be an argument for, under very strict guidelines, that you can achieve something through the living of better chemistry. But the problem is to get there, there's a lot of danger to that. There's risk to that. Even LSD had its problems, right? People went on bad trips, never came back.
People went on bad trips. And you know what? I don't think there's anybody from our generation, if you were at all partying and smoking weed and stuff, somewhere along the line, you dropped some acid. And I'm certainly not going to sit here and tell you I never did it.
More than a few times.
I'm not going to tell you how many times I did it.
Well, my life's an open book. For about 3 years, once a week, and that was kind of like, and then it got to the point where, like all good highs, I've talked to you in the past. I'm a recovering alcoholic, haven't drank in over 34 years. Yeah. And like all of us good addicts, we take those things, those feel good things, and they till they don't do anything for you anymore, and so, but if taken, I think there is a line of thought, and some of the, Bruce, you probably know this, what's the new hypnotic drug down in South America that everybody that's almost a millionaire goes down and they take it and they see God? What is that drug?
I haven't heard of that one.
You take it, ayahuasca. Ayahuasca, and you take it with a shaman, right? Okay. And he mixes it in a tea. You live in a hut. You go down there. You're there. It's almost like visiting India for the Beatles, only here, and it's a hallucinogenic. I would imagine it's not unlike LSD. And so many people say that they have seen God in one way or another, or proof of God when they take this. It's a very spiritual kind of thing. So I don't know what that means.
I tried it for the first time. I wasn't yet 16 years old. And my ribs hurt the next day from laughing so much. But so that was not a bad trip at all.
Yeah, Michael.
Did you smoke in those days, boys?
More of it, huh?
Did you smoke in those days?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah.
Okay. You ever be on LSD and do this with your cigarette?
Yeah, the traces. Woo! Yeah.
Oh yeah. I could get to the end of my name and still see it.
Without throwing names out because some of them might be listening. But I know one person that took 4 times what a normal dose of LSD would be. And the trip wasn't going to end, and he was working at a particular company where a small shop where he went in there and he was working like 18 hours a day to try to keep his mind off all the things that were going on in his mind. He was trying to hoping someday he would come down. He became so successful at doing what he was doing at that company that he started his own business, took it online, and he owned a $3.5 million house on 18 acres in Cayucas overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Multiple stores of this business. If I said the store, people would figure it out. Multiple stores of this business he went into, and multiple houses all over the place. And he's currently living in a country club. And anyway, and he finally stopped hearing all those noises and seeing all those things.
And this was from that one trip?
From that one trip that he took too much and couldn't come down. So he just tried to work every waking moment to keep his mind off all the things that were going on in his head.
And how long did this process go on for?
When he goes to conventions, people want his autograph because he did so well so early in that business. Which has now been pretty much taken over by much bigger companies. But anyway,
it sounds like you're saying that after this trip, he did this for what, years? That this was an ongoing thing?
I don't know. You know what? I honestly couldn't tell you without asking him how long that went on before it finally stopped. But in the meantime, he got so into what he was doing, he became super successful at it on his own.
Well, I do know, I can tell you from personal experience, whatever that will cause you to drive you at that point, okay, and focus on something, either stuff happening at home, I've got to focus here, or anything, right? For example, when I quit drinking, all right, there's nothing, all right, where do I get my inspiration as an artist now, right? Well, guess what? I found out walking. I didn't know it at the time, was building up my endorphins and giving me, and all of a sudden I was back in. It took about 3 or 4 years after drinking to find any joy in life at all, right? All I knew is I didn't want to freaking die, and I was about 6 months from dying when I quit drinking. I hit a fifth of Jack Daniels every single day, and sometimes more. All right, every single day. And I was in sales, and I was the #1 salesman for Sierra Spring Water in Canada and the United States.
Oh, wow.
Do you feel a crash coming here, Royce?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It all crashed for me, you know? But that's the danger for artists. You know, I've got to be creative, right? I have to be creative. Even if I'm doodling, I like to sketch. My first love was learning to draw because I wanted to be a comic book artist. That was my first hope in life, right? So I learned to draw pretty good. And even then, I've got to be creative. I've got to turn it around, make it look a little different this way or whatever, or it's not worth my while. Well, these people at Laurel Canyon, they think about the songwriters, Jackson Browne, Glenn Fry, the Eagles as a unit, you know, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, you know, the songwriting connections that the Monkees had to downtown, you know, and all of this, that just doesn't happen too often. And we were truly blessed. Thank God it was all recorded. Yeah. Because nobody would have ever believed us, right?
Yeah.
No,
two things I wanted to mention, Michael, too. I just wanted to put a button on your ayahuasca story. So 2 proponents of it, you know, Johnny Depp was one of them, but also Sting did it. Did experience it in the rainforest. And basically he says it takes you through like your life and your death. You kind of go through a life-death experience, but then, you know, you come out of it and obviously your consciousness has changed. So he was a big proponent of, you know, at least the one time that he got to experience it. But the other thing too, like, you know, you were talking with this Laurel Canyon scene. The one thing that strikes me about it that I'm really heartened by, because, you know, you wouldn't see so much of it, I think, now or, you know, since then. It's kind of almost like the 20s with the writers, is how supportive also they were of each other. Like there wasn't that jealousy, that backbiting to kind of.
Oh, good point.
You know, it was a very healthy, loving.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point. No, I agree with you, Bruce. That as a matter of fact, that's what when Nash said that he read the words to Woodstock by Joni Mitchell, he was amazed that she took it all in the way that she did, because she represented what he felt he experienced at Woodstock. And of course, that was a major hit for all of us growing up, you know. What a wonderful song. But everybody was inviting. I mean, Zappa going, I'm going to sign you because I don't understand you. How freaking bold is that?
Exactly.
That's bold. Well, he was bold. He was bold, you know. And that's why I kind of see him as, you know, maybe the shaman or the tribal chieftain of what was going on there. I can
understand that, yeah.
With Mama Cass being the social director, the queen, right? And the magic that just, I mean, think about it. Everybody thinks of Alice Cooper as basically a 70s band, but their roots go back to the late 60s. Yeah. And I've seen photos of Alice, you know, blonde hair. Oh man, you know, he had to grow into his look. He was the ugliest guy in that band in those years, right? And he's the lead singer. So, you know, he got rid of the blonde hair, you know, the makeup happened, you know, because he knows he's no pinup boy. And they offered something, but, you know, it's the beliefs. And think about how willing these young people, because you think, oh, they're just a bunch of stoned hippies. No, these were hard fucking working people. You know, they showed up at 7 a.m. I'm going to tell you, as a musician, 7 a.m. comes too damn early when you are a musician. I find it easy now to get up at those. But when I was in bands, I didn't get up till 3 in the afternoon.
Oh yeah, no, I tell you, well, my younger brother and his wife had the Eddings duo in Las Vegas. You know, Richie, you guys have met Richie.
Right.
They were getting written up by Forrest Duke, who was writing up, you know, Dean Martin and Elvis, and he was calling them the Eddings duo. It was a must-see duo, you know.
Right.
And man, they would play till like 2 in the morning, and all night long shot glasses and beers would be showing up on all the amplifiers. It'd be 6 or 7 at a time on your amplifier, And boy, when they got done, they were flying high. I mean, break time would come around, somebody would invite them out to the park lot, to take something, have something. And boy, they'd get off, they'd go look for a place to have breakfast, they'd continue partying. They'd get home at about 6 in the morning and wake up in time to do it all over again. And that was their whole life.
Well, and if you are a creator, a songwriter, the witch, you need the witching hour. Yeah, for me, it was like everybody's asleep, the world is asleep. Never mind the fact that over in England it's 12 noon. But to me, the whole world was asleep, and my mind would just go out and search for something different. I just, my mind came alive during that time. Like I said, I'd wake up at 3 on an early day, 3 p.m., and I was up till at least 6 or 7 a.m. the following morning.
Oh yeah.
And so I can tell you now, I've met a lot of lazy musicians. I've worked with them all. All right. But the ones that can get the gigs and turn a profit and all of that, they're hardworking people. They really are. And energy.
It's all a lot of work. What we're doing here tonight is a lot of work. I mean,
yes, it is. Good point.
You don't do something for an hour before the show and have a show. I mean, it goes on all week long, especially if you're throwing some other things out there during the week. But
I never come on this show unless I've had a chance to look up what you're possibly going to, just by your title. If I don't have the time to do that, then those are times like you may not see me on the show because I wouldn't have anything to offer.
That. You want to be able to contribute. Well, I wanted to mention to you, and I haven't mentioned this yet. We haven't interacted for a long time with our former co-host Lou Mars, and he's got a band called the Pink House Band, and they actually got a gig booked at the Whiskey A Go-Go too.
Oh wow!
And he's got some other stuff going on. But
congratulations, Lou's.
But he's going to be on next Sunday with his entire band in one of our little windows here, and he's got a video that they've made, a demo video.
I saw it.
Yeah. So anyway, next week, him and his band are going to be the show.
Lou Mars, the drummer, is now playing a double-necked bass. Actually, a double-neck guitar with the top neck being bass and the bottom neck being six-string.
Not a 12-string like Jimmy Page. But bass. And so, I mean, I thought they sounded pretty damn good, really.
Hey, if I don't make that show for whatever reason, tell Lou I said they've got to bring her to the center. They can't have her off to the side. You've got one female in there, and she's better looking than the rest of those 3 dogs, and they need to bring her to the side, even on their posters.
No, that's a really good point. My younger brother used to always say he was always looking for a gal for the band because you got more money for the band with a gal, always.
Right.
Look at Michael stirring it up, trying to get these guys broken up before they go anywhere.
No. I think the 2 of them have some talent. I've said so. I think they could offer it something. Now, from what Royce told me, they were looking for a younger market. I don't see them. I think, from what I think, and I'm a fan. I love her songs. I love Lou's songs. I've typed in on a couple of his. He'll even play portions of songs. And he doesn't even care about the dynamics or anything, just kind of get the idea out. I've seen his videos, and if him and I were in a band, I could write with that guy, right? But the thing is I think that the market I would go for, remember we talked about the magic of turning 30? I'd go for the 35 to 40-year-old market and older. And I would go for those, and I would take an approach to as many of the traditional gigs that Lou knows how to do. But I'd also take the approach of the house party, and every opportunity to teach this music as a band to the community colleges, things like that. Those are gigs, and you can show up and teach. And Lou's got He's got 1,001 stories. He's been through it all. He's lived the life. And, you know, you can make money teaching, Lou, just in case I'm not here next week. But I'm a fan. Basically, I'm a fan of both of them. I just think that if I was their manager, I'd be going, no. We're not going to go for the younger market. We're going to go and we're going to turbocharge.
He was pushing that for a while, but I don't see any evidence of it now. Anyway, I got to do one quick commercial break here. Not really commercial break. That's a joke. But I got to give a shout out to a couple of people. My friend Steve Midtham just showed up. Steve's a busy guy, and I really appreciate whenever he comes on, Steve. But I also want to give a shout out to a couple of other podcasters that have come on. I pretty much let everybody know you're another podcaster. You come on my show, and I know that you are. You're going to get the best shout out you ever got. And right now we have Harry's Music Room here, who's actually been on my show as a co-host. And we've also got CGC Vinyl Christian. And CGC Vinyl, he's got a good show. I recommend everybody go check out CGC Vinyl. I did a contest entry for him once, and he actually returned the favor and did one for me. And this is Harry. This is CGC Vinyl. He's got a good show. He's a good guy. He works hard at it, and he's doing a good job. And
I'll check him out.
So is Harry at Harry's Music Room.
Now I love Harry. I'm a fan of Harry. Yeah.
Harry's been on the show before. He was on the same time with Rachel once, and Harry's a great guy.
Oh, he just says it like he sees it, and you know, that's just the way it is. And he's a straight shooter. And whether I agree with his point of view or not, I always know, man, you know, the guy think, you know, he's got a brain behind what he says. And so maybe I should just kind of second guess myself from time to time. No, I love Harry.
Yeah, I've got one more to do. Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursions. He has a great show, and I interact.
Yes, he does.
I go check him out. And he does some really, really good stuff. So I highly recommend that everybody go see Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursions. You won't want to even leave without subscribing to his channel. You know,
I love it when David takes apart an album, and he does it in several kind of ways. You know, depending on what he's trying to go through. His last couple of videos have been really good, really good.
Yeah. No, he's a good guy. So anyway, there's my shout outs. Now I want to talk about the premise of the show is where are they today with all of these icons? So we're going to have to go through it kind of quickly. And I hate to do it this way, but it just makes the most sense. I'm going to read the people that I know are deceased, members of the Laurel Canyon family. And I'm going to start with Jim Morrison, 1971. Jim Morrison died. And he's a member of the 27 Club, excuse me. Janis Joplin died in 1970, also a member of the 27 Club. And I'll skip down to Jimi Hendrix. I brought him up because he was opening for the Monkees, who two of them lived out there. And he stayed there whenever he was in LA. They had a place for him in a cabin. So he also died 1970, and he's also a member of the 27 Club. Okay, so Frank Zappa died in 1993. Mama Cass Elliot, 1974. David Crosby, 2023. Of course, that's just been a couple of months ago. We all saw that. Glenn Frey, 2016. Harry Nilsson, who owned the flat in London that both Keith Moon and Mama Cass Elliot died in. He was also lived in Laurel Canyon, and he died in 1994. Peter Tork, the Monkees, died in 2019. Davy Jones of the Monkees died in 2012, and Michael Nesmith of the Monkees died in 2021. Bob Haidt, Canned Heat, and I always loved that band, Canned Heat.
Me too.
I found that album, Record Store Day on Canned Heat, and he died in 81. And another member of Canned Heat died too. I can't remember his name right now. It didn't, for one other reason, it didn't get written down. But as I went through all these other names and look them up. You know, whether it was, I'm sorry, but you know what? I don't think anybody could memorize all these names. whether it was like, you know, Stephen Stills, of course, he's still alive. Let's see.
And touring.
Pardon me? And touring.
And touring. Yeah.
Carole King is still active. Jackson Browne is still touring. He's been up here to Vina Robles, where I saw Alice Cooper in April like 3 times already.
Yeah.
Let's see. Of course, Stephen Stills, Buffalo Springfield, and Crosby. He's alive. Mamas and the Papas. Michelle Phillips is still alive. The young blonde. Of course, John Mayall's still alive. Alice Cooper, obviously, he's touring. Bonnie Raitt, Linda Ronstadt, they're all active still in the music industry. Let's see. Now, I can't remember. Brian Wilson. I think Brian Wilson passed away, and for some reason,
he did?
Well,
he's
maybe
still
not.
alive. He's still alive.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. My mistake. Sorry, guys. So anyway, everybody I looked up, other than the ones that had passed away, they were all still active.
Yeah, Stills and Young just did a benefit
many
together.
Of them still touring and stuff. I guess when it's in your blood, it's in your blood. I'm sure they're all very wealthy, you know, but so that's what happened. You know, they all became wealthy. Some bad things happened in Laurel Canyon. They were already leaving because they were making big money. And some of those Laurel Canyon houses back in the day weren't much more than shacks, you know. And so they were all moving out, getting nicer places, and leaving the area and stuff like that. And
and you know what? That's, you know, I think that's kind of part of the. That's the what is it? That's the but to the whole story. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, it was great, but you know, and these guys had some success, so they weren't poor. You know, they weren't poor, but later they would become multimillionaires, many of them.
Right.
And that, to me, it even has been responsible for destroying creativity in a lot of bands, and in a lot of artists these days. You know, that's why I'm amazed when I hear, I'm hoping Yes is going to be the hat trick. But when I heard the one cut off their upcoming album, I'm going, I would have never have thought. I've done videos going, that's not Yes, you know. But if that first cut is matched in any way, that's going to be a great album. Metallica's 72 Seasons is a great album. Jethro Tull, Rock Flute is a great album. And these are seniors, people. These are seniors. And these aren't just regular, good albums. These are great albums. That's
exactly right.
James Hetfield has never written better lyrics than what I'm hearing on 72 Seasons. And everybody who's covering that album is going, yeah, it sounds really good because I really like the guitar here. And nobody's talking about the lyrics. You know, and it's like, no, there's some damn good, thought-provoking lyrics on that album and on Rock Flute.
Yeah, he dug really deep on this one, and you know he's gone.
Yes, he did.
He's gone through his share of stuff in recent years. But the one thing too, I'll give Metallica credit is that, and I was telling a friend of this, you know, kind of doing my review of the album, is that these guys could easily just rest on their laurels. They could have done a few years ago. They could have done an anniversary tour for the Black Album.
Exactly.
Fine, made millions of dollars. These guys have continued to be creative. Like the album or not, I give them, you know, points just for that. But as a bonus, the music is good. I mean, I know people still will always be hung up on, you know, Ride Lightning and Master of Puppets and all that stuff. This is a great rock album. 72 Seasons. It's nothing new. They're not rewriting the rule book or whatever, but they don't have to. It's just a great, solid Metallica album.
I think it's the lyrics that bring it up to anything they've done. Okay. Now I know early Metallica fans, you know, the Black Album killed them, right? Well, guess what? I wasn't interested in them until the Black Album. I freely admit that. All right. I had heard their stuff and it was too thrashy. And I've always said how I got started in the music anyway. I was a Beatle fan, and I found it uncomfortable to go over to Led Zeppelin, right? Well, I think Metallica was that one level that until the Black Album came out. See, they learned to do heavy metal and write songs on that album.
I agree with you 100%. That is my favorite album.
Yeah.
Enter the Sandman, the Unforgiven, and those songs are the ones we're talking about here.
It has melody.
That is, those are just.
Oh, awesome. And remember those years? We're talking, the Black Album by Metallica and Achtung Baby by U2.
Early 90s.
Wasn't that it? And then all of the Seattle bands, wasn't that exciting? I thought, rock can't die, because I've seen it almost die several times, We saw it with the 50s guys and the Beatles saving us. Then we saw the Beatles die and things dying down, and some people say punk saved us. I say the police saved us despite punk. Okay. And then unfortunately,
anything for me.
Unfortunately, we haven't had a resurgence since grunge, and we need it. We need it badly. Right. Yeah,
that was the last great era for
guitar. That was the last great subgenre. Yeah,
right. And part of the problem is since then, the subgenres have broken, and heavy metal is more to blame for this than almost any subgenre of rock. As there are subgenres. Well, I like heavy death metal thrash on Thursdays. Bands from Norway. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ, give me a break.
The strange thing is things kind of in a weird way also reverted back to almost like the pre-60s aesthetic of like a Tin Pan Alley producer-centric approach.
Good point.
Pop stars that don't write their own material.
I got to bring up a couple of things. This friend of mine, Paul, we used to be on a show together elsewhere, and everybody knows him because everybody was on that show almost. And he lives in Colombia.
Ah.
Yeah.
All right, Paul.
Yeah, yeah. And Paul's a great guy. And I gotta give another shout out, guys. Don't mean to interrupt everything, but
no, that's fine.
My buddy Aaron here, Mr. Bizarro, he's got a great show. You've been on Mr. Bizarro's show, haven't you?
I've seen it. Yeah. I've seen it. Yeah. I think I'm pretty sure I'm a subscriber. I think I am a subscriber.
Yeah, Aaron does a great job. He plays music the entire night, album after album, when he's not giving his own personal great commentary, entertaining. And he's just a great guy. I mean, I've been super busy lately. I think what was I there, Aaron, about a week ago was the last one. And then the other night I was actually making some videos of my own when I noticed you came on. But anyway, now
that you're reminding me, Royce, I am, because you had suggested him on another show that I was there, and I'd gone over and I subscribed to him. Yes, I am aware of his channel. Great channel.
Yeah, no, he's a fun guy to go watch too. He's quite the entertainer, actually. So hey, Aaron, good to see you here, brother. Thank you very much. Appreciate seeing you here. So anyway, you know what? We've pretty much ran the gamut here.
But can we get back before we close to what Bruce was saying, Royce? Because I did a video on this, and then I'll just let Bruce take it from here. On how it's one of my biggest videos is why today's music sucks, with a title like that.
I remember that one. I like that.
Yeah, and in it I talk about several dial-up writers. And Bruce, I'd like you to kind of conclude what you were talking about, because I agree with you 100% on this.
Yeah, it's a strange era. I feel like, from 2000 on, the grunge era, and like everything kind of reverted back to pop. But, it also kind of, we had streaming, and there were a lot of factors as to why music isn't the same. But what we started getting was more of an influx, again, of pop stars, but manufactured pop stars. A lot of people not writing their own material. So it's back to almost like a Tin Pan Alley approach of like a few writers, like you said, Michael, dominating this whole thing. And then it's more of a producer's medium rather than an artist's medium anymore. As far as what's mainstream, you're always going to have rock as like always, as a subgenre, or always in the shadows, and who knows when it'll cycle back. But as far as we've kind of gone full circle back to like a pre-60s, pre-progressive rock, pre-66 onward kind of era. I would say.
Yes.
I mean, I would agree, wouldn't you, Michael?
No, I think you've hit it. In the 50s, we had the Brill Building. We had Carole King, her husband, and about 15 to 25 other writers, all writing on the same floor. And it went out to Paul Anka. It went out to whoever, and blah, 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 blah. And it was cookie cutter. And that's why the only great rock and roll acts, for the most part, there were a few exceptions, were the black rock and rollers, right?
Yeah.
Because Little Richard was writing his stuff. Chuck Berry was writing his stuff. And as great a songwriter as Carole King is, and she truly is one of my favorites, Bruce, I mean that. I think she's fantastic. I don't like the way the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, kind of did her fluff piece and all of that. And Taylor Swift, I keep hearing, I've been following Record Store Day all day in the vinyl community. Everybody goes, I just wrote in Rachel's in the Peanut Gallery, because somebody said that half the people standing in line were for Taylor Swift albums, and I wrote the other half were waiting for them to leave. Because
and I was one of those, because there were a couple of young kids that came in specifically for Swift albums.
And she writes her own stuff, I know, and she's a nice person, and she's easy on the eyes. Not my style of woman, but easy on the eyes. I can recognize that. And you know what? She's the female Donny Osmond, and about as useful.
Well, the other thing too is that they've gotten rid of guitar. Guitar is gone too, as far as part of the music, the sonic palette. Purposely, that's been stripped away too. So that's another, why we don't kind of have as far as good mainstream rock anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And somebody brought this up
as a female Donny Osmond. I started out, when she first came out, she was singing songs about her rival being a cheerleader while she sat on the benches and things like that. And people were going crazy over it. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't get her. I never will.
I don't get her either, but she's huge.
There is something disingenuous about her, though, because it's very kind of contrived that she's always trying to kind of underplay her actual superstardom and her looks, and try to pretend that she's a normal girl that doesn't fit in anywhere.
Well, she comes out dressed in almost nothing, trying to play like she's in junior high school. She just doesn't offer me anything that makes me, it's too popish. It's what she writes about does not concern me. Okay. And I know everybody's going, but you're just a freaking old man on your porch with a shotgun, rocking in your chair, yelling at the kids to get off your lawn, and if that's true, so be it. But I am a senior rocking on my chair on the lawn. All right. I've won my stripes. And if you want my business, because I still listen to new music, I just don't listen to clowns like Taylor Swift. Well, that's it.
And I'm not going to give her any.
It's not designed for us, so I don't take it.
No, it's not designed for us.
But Bruce, Bruce, she's a danger, though. She's a danger, Bruce.
No, but here's where that popularity comes from. First of all, you had the Musketeers. You had Britney Spears. You had what was the other one at the same time as Britney Spears?
Oh God, there was half a dozen of them.
No. But it was the main rival, though.
Christina Aguilera.
Christina Aguilera.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Christina. And then so they came out and they were from the Disney Channel, and the mothers of America couldn't go buy their albums quick enough for their little girls. Somebody that they could listen to that they thought was wholesome. The next thing you knew, they were practically nude on stage and singing really raunchy sexual. Not to me, it's not raunchy and sexual; it's normal. But singing raunchy sexual lyrics, and now the mothers could no longer promote them to their. They were trying to take the albums back. Give me that.
Well, of course.
Yeah. And then we get Miley Cyrus, and she was Hannah Montana. Again, the mothers were like, yay, they ran out and they bought albums for their kids because this was Hannah Montana again. And then the next thing, then remember the Wrecking Ball with Miley Cyrus, or the concert or the show she did with what was the guy's name? He was wearing striped pants. His father's famous too. I just can't think of his name, but I mean that was something else. But I can't think of his name. But so anyway, they had to take that back. Then here comes Taylor Swift, and Taylor Swift is still playing to that audience. She's playing to the mothers of America that'll buy her albums for their daughters.
And whatever. No, I'm serious. What happened to young girls having Paul McCartney or David Cassidy or Bobby Sherman or Donny Osmond or Michael Jackson or Elton John on their walls? But now young girls have, because it's all about this unrealistic fantasy about what it's like to be a woman these days, coming up or growing into a woman that has nothing to do with real life. Sorry, nothing to do with real life. No. And pretty soon the woke crowd is going to wake up.
Well, the other problem too, Michael, is that and again, this is kind of harkening back, and again, we sound like the old man railing at the cloud. But but back in the day, the end game, the purpose was music. It was art. Now the currency is all about fame, and it doesn't matter what you do to get it, but it's all the end game is fame itself. It has nothing to do with artistry. It has nothing to do with anything like that.
Yes, and guess what?
Wants to be famous for something.
Yeah, guess what? You and I are guilty of that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be on screen right now in our own little backyard, right? This is our little thing. We want to be noticed. I mean, anybody that doesn't, I don't want to do it. I don't like to have high gloss look to my channel. I just kind of put a camera up on the corner. First of all, then why are you here? First of all, if you're not trying to offer something beyond that. And then you have to ask yourself as a content creator, am I offering my audience something? See, these new singer-songwriters, these new artists, they're not asking that anymore. The Beatles have, how many interviews have you heard Paul and John and George and even Ringo say? That band worked their asses off. If we needed songs for an album, Brian came in and said, you got to have an album out in 6 weeks, guys. Oh, well, Paul and I better start writing then. Oh, God, just think, there's an impossibility. That doesn't happen anymore on planet Earth. Okay? That's why people like Taylor Swift is dangerous. We got to wipe these people off the face of notifications. We need to find artists who are heroes and get rid of the zeros. The Motley, you talk about, I cut Motley Fool down all the time, right? Because guess what? Now I hear they're in the studio because, hey, guess what? Nikki Sixx found her best buddy again. They're having a sleepover and writing. Oh boy, isn't it a love fest? Oh, Jesus. Okay, so anyway, you know what I feel about that. But generally speaking, they haven't done a bit of writing, and they did some couple of cuts that were okay. They weren't untalented at one point, but they haven't been talented for decades. And that thing that ate Vince Neil is the biggest joke on the planet, and I can't stand that band. And yet you look at Metallica, who are playing the same kind of they're playing even bigger venues, but big venues, right? And they see the need, and James Hetfield digging into his soul for the story on each of those songs and coming up somehow with a concept, a bare-ass concept. See, everybody says he's a panty waste. When they did some kind of a monster, oh, I need to see my therapist at 6 o'clock. Whatever gets you through the fucking night, James, because you know what? You're still writing, you're still producing, you're still doing what you need to do. All right? And that's what is missing with the Taylor Swifts and everything. They're not writing anything consequential.
Michael, too,
no, not at all.
Oh, the problem too with I think the bottom line too with Motley Crue is, like you said, in their youth, it was you know, they had something potent. But the problem is, like, when you have a band like that, there are certain bands that are built for longevity. I think Metallica is a good example of that. The Motley Crue model, just what it is, the concept, that's suited to like young, hungry studs on the prowl. And
Well,
like,
it was,
Right, right.
it's not, that's not a concept that's going to age well. It's not going to look good on a 50, 60-year-old. You know what I mean? It
Well,
doesn't
Tommy
work.
Lee just turned 60, and he's out there telling the guys to expose their penises and grab women's breasts.
I know,
60 years old.
Yeah,
Thanks, Grandpa.
It's edgy when you're in your 20s. When you're in your 50s and 60s,
It's
No, it doesn't
embarrassing.
It
It's
doesn't work
embarrassing,
anymore.
isn't it?
it's
You know,
terrible.
Isn't
Right on,
isn't
Bruce.
that called being a dirty old man? Hey, you know, show me your panties, little girl. You know, I mean, good Lord.
Well, you know,
Not
back
if you're a
in
multi-millionaire
the
rock star, I
day,
guess not.
back in the day, I liked them. Dr. Feelgood, I thought was good, and some of the earlier stuff.
Yeah, so they've got, like I said, they've put out some cuts that are fine, and they're party songs, and we know they're party songs.
Right, and we
You
know,
know,
but that was
and-
also that was also the glam rock, glam metal, big hair rock era. You know,
which I hated in general.
well,
You know,
and between grunge and rap, it just kind of they just drove nails in the coffin there.
well, grunge to me saved us from the hair bands.
Yeah,
And changed one of the
absolutely.
hair bands into a grunge band, and that was my favorite, Alice in Chains. You know,
I
could talk about Alice in Chains for an hour straight, man. They are brilliant.
Yeah, no, absolutely. David Cantrell, right? I mean, I have
Jerry Cantrell on
Cantrell.
guitar.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
two of his solo albums. CDs,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but together as a unit, and first of all, that
great.
first album, Man in a Box, just
Man in a
right there. I bought that album, and they looked like hair band guys on the album cover.
Right.
Remember?
Watching that video, what a trip.
Yeah, but the song was so different than what you were hearing from and I like Bon Jovi. Sorry, people, but I do. But you know, I love their I'm a cowboy type of almost. They were like outlaw metal or not metal, outlaw hair. You know,
Right.
and so they kind of got a pass with me. But this and the rest of them I hated, except for when Man in the Box came out, and I bought that album, and I go, oh, it's another hair band, but boy, I love it. And then the album was great. And then they did Jar of Flies and went into another dimension. And I went, okay, now we're talking Beatle level. Now we're talking true artist level. And they had me from that point on.
And they're unplugged.
Yeah,
It's
they're
still,
a great
you know,
band.
one of the very best of all time.
Yes, it is, Bruce. You're right. Absolutely right.
And they did something unique too sonically, where so many of their songs, it's like, you know, the vocal is in harmony throughout the whole track, which is very unique.
And they've got that John Lennon trick. The harmonies underneath the melody.
Yeah.
You know, like the early John Lennon songs, it would be Paul, I'm so in love with, and John's in love with you. You know, that lower line. I'm not trying to stay in tune, folks, but you know what I'm saying? John was the master of hiding his harmonies underneath the melody line. Okay. And that's what Alice in Chains did all of the time. And they were the first band to utilize it as often as the Beatles did. And that's by the way, one of these days I'm going to do a video on the greatest secrets about the Beatles on why they were so successful. And that's one of the things I would bring out is John Lennon and Paul McCartney developing that wonderful kind of gravelly John Lennon voice hiding under the sweet Paul McCartney, especially on earlier Beatles songs. You know, it's like magic. It's gold. Yeah.
No, the Beatles were magic, no doubt about it. Harmony was insane.
Well, they are the greatest band on the planet Earth. That's all there is to it. They rewrote the fabric of pop music, if not music itself. They're on Beethoven's level. They're on Bach's level for the 20th century. And boy, you know, with Paul still out there doing it, and the lack of what we're seeing in the actual on the airways these days, maybe so far
you know,
the 21st century.
You know what's really staggering too about the Beatles, which doesn't get talked about enough, is we have their catalog, which is amazing. I mean, just on its own. think of all the music that they gave us just through the people that they've inspired through the years. I mean, there's so many bands and catalogs we would not have if it wasn't for them.
That's a
and
great
and the inspiration that they gave to others.
Yeah. Inspired.
We wouldn't have had the Stones as the Stones are and have been since the breakup of the Beatles if the Beatles hadn't existed. The Stones were a one-trick pony when they came out, and they were great at doing it. All right. They were a blues cover band. All right. They could kick it into high gear and make it popish. That was their whole trick. That was it. All right. Then they watched John Lennon and Paul McCartney go into a corner, spend 20 minutes and write, "I Want to Be Your Man." And it did something to Mick and Keith anyway. Right. Yeah. And they turned into something else. Every other band on the planet was doing the same thing, not just in England. They were doing it here in the United States. It took the United States a while to recatch its breath and to offer something on that level.
Well, I also remember, though, that the Stones, the Beatles were number one. They came out, they started the British invasion. Then we had that whole explosion. But the Stones actually pulled up, to me, like almost even with them. And people were dividing across lines. If you weren't dividing between the Beach Boys and the Beatles, you were dividing between the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, you know. Mm-hmm. And they were right there with the Beatles for a while, and they were a little edgier than the Beatles. The Beatles were more wholesome sounding. The Stones were a little, you know, when I say raunchy, I mean that in a good way, rock and roll way, you know. And a lot of people were starting to prefer the Stones over the Beatles.
Oh, I knew friends who loved the Stones, couldn't stand the Beatles, you know.
Right. Well,
they were just too safe for them.
I liked them both, always did, you know.
Me too. Yeah, me too. I think the Rolling Stones is the most improved band in rock. Yeah. If you ask me. They started at this level and they wound up on Beatle level as far as even writing, you know. I mean, and when the Beatles faded and they were bitching at each other, well, I don't like Ram. Right. Well, I don't like Imagine. You know, how do you sleep, Paul? Right. And they're doing that stuff. The Stones provides us with Sticky Fingers, hit after hit after hit, and they don't sound like the Beatles anymore.
No, but anyway, you can go all the way back to Ruby Tuesday and Paint It Black and Jumping Jack Flash, and those songs are great even today to listen to.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
without a doubt.
Yeah,
but with Sticky Fingers, they had a new sound. That was 70s, baby. That was 70s.
That was a total game changer.
And it didn't sound like the old Stones quite, you know. I have the
new remastered, and I have the original pressing with this real zipper on it. You know?
Yeah. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, guys, you know, there was one band I wanted to talk to. You know, I was going to go, but one band I got to bring up again, and that's Jethro Tull. I did see live in concert, and what a spectacle to see Ian Anderson up there at the time, long flowing hair almost to the ground, playing his flute like you've never seen anybody play a flute before. Never see anybody play one in a rock band, that's for damn sure. And any time I saw anybody else trying to play one, almost nothing came out. Play was just incredible.
I went to see them on their Passion Play tour at the Cow Palace, and it was like, I just couldn't believe it. I go, lead flute. I kept telling my friends all night, imagine that, lead flute. You know,
what year was that?
And lead vocals.
I don't know. It was the year that Passion Play came out. I think it was the Cow Palace. I think that's where I saw him at. And I remember we were up in Santa Rosa, and the Emporium there at Coddingtown had tickets. And so me and my fellow musician friends, we were all doing maintenance. You know, we were janitors. That's how we made money, because we're still trying to be in bands. And so we all got together and we cleaned up. I cleaned up 2 theaters. They helped me do that. And then we stood out in front of the Emporium waiting all night for Ticketron, was it in those days? To get those tickets, $22.50 to see Led Zeppelin. That's when the ticket prices were starting to go up. Yeah. And now you just $22.50 couldn't buy you a beer.
Well, back in the day, they weren't making money on the concerts. They were just promoting their albums.
Right.
You're always talking about that. But the thing about Jethro Tull is you can compare the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. You can debate who you thought was better between the. My cousins all lived in California. I lived out in the Nevada desert. They loved the Beach Boys. And I would go there and I would argue on behalf of the Beatles, and we'd take turns naming hits of the bands that we liked the best, you know. And it usually ended a draw, but they were both great bands. But there is nobody you can compare with Jethro Tull. You can't sit there and say, you know, they got it from the Beatles, they got it from the Stones, they got it from, you know, Willie Dixon. No, they are so unique. There's nothing like them out there.
Well, they're unique from what they started off as, even. They were a bar blues band to begin with.
Yeah, you know? Michael, you've always talked about too, like lyrics, and I think too, like Ian Anderson brings. I mean, you might talk about like underrated lyricists. He brings a very definite point of view to things, and very. I love. I mean, like the Aqualung, all the lyrics on that, and the writing on that, like that's top notch.
Right.
Aqualung is prophetic.
Absolutely.
It talks about the homeless and mental illness that we are seeing today in 2023, and it's all characterized by the character Aqualung. And if you listen to side 2, that's Aqualung's childhood. And he's the young man who was raised in the church, higher education, with their God tucked up underneath my arm, right? And he turned into a lascivious snake of a human being watching pretty panties run. You know? That's brilliant, folks.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
brilliant.
Even like a mainstream hit like Bungle in the Jungle has a very cynical outlook to it, and it touches upon things like that, and, you know, things like The Teacher. I mean, you know, just great writing.
Right.
Yes, you're right, Bruce.
Great writing.
He's one of my favorite. You know, they're in my Mount Rock Olympus of all bands. You know, Jethro Tull's one of the top 13 bands in rock and roll, in my opinion. You know,
I love Jethro Tull.
Yep.
Great.
They're every bit as good as Yes. They're every bit as good as Deep Purple. You know, I mean, we're talking monster bands, and Jethro Tull's right there. And guess what? They just released a fantastic album. What a gift.
I'm going to get that for sure.
Oh, it's great.
You know, I've been buying so much vinyl and haven't had a lot of time. I'm getting way behind even listening to my records.
Yeah. Hey, brother, I got to get going. I just saw the time. We are.
Oh, no, I know. Anyway, hey, you guys, I really appreciate Bruce and Michael for coming on the show tonight.
It was good to see you, Bruce.
Very much.
Great to see everyone.
Again, often. And I want to say to the chat, and the line hasn't moved in a while, so I'm hoping someone's still there. But we really appreciate you guys, and thank you very much for coming. And that's what's going on in Royce's world today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Royce, for having me.
Sign off. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Royce.
Take care, everyone. Until next time.